Hello and welcome to CAD Live, and this is episode 80 of this wonderful show, the finest dating and game show on the entire internet, allegedly. And I say that so that I don't get sued. Jack, how are you? I saw you were just over on Ryan's channel before. He's doing a really intelligent stream over there.
Yeah, he is. He's talking about the writing process. I was there lurking in the chat, and it was very interesting to see him how he's building up the new book about frame, I believe. Which is going to be very interesting because that is one of the main focuses of the Married Red Pill subreddit, or at least it used to be. So I'm looking very much forward to that one.
Yeah, that's going to be awesome. Does he use the software Scrivener? Do you know? Is that what he was writing it on? Did he mention that?
He did mention it, but I forgot what it was.
Oh,
he
okay.
did mention it.
Okay. Yeah. No, I'd be interested. I'll ask him later. Anyway, welcome, guys. Anybody who's watching live, welcome. I see people are trickling in. The Silver Bishop is here. Hello, sir. David S. is here. Alpha Widowmaker is here. Javier Joseph is here. Good to see you guys. Welcome to anybody else who comes in. If you're watching this on the replay, welcome to you guys as well. Thank you ever so much for tuning in, and I'm sure you're going to get a bunch of value out of this because today we continue our analysis stroke exploration of the wonderful The Art of Seduction by Mr. Robert Greene. And we have got a couple of humdinger sections coming up today, haven't we, Jack?
Oh, yes, we do. Mixed signals and the indirect approach. And we've been getting a lot of questions about the indirect approach.
Well, this is a really interesting topic, and I'm looking forward to cracking into this because I think, well, we'll talk about this in a moment. I think maybe the way he's describing indirect is possibly slightly different to how we might talk about it in a game sense, but we'll get into that. Just in the meantime, guys, please do subscribe to this channel. Also subscribe to Jack's channel as well. Support your favorite world-class content creators. Hit the notifications bell as well. Do give us a like. Do give us a comment underneath if you can later. That really helps to push this broadcast and others up the charts, if you like. In the meantime, whack in your comments and questions into the chat, and we will deal with them as we go through the show. But as I say, today we are looking at, it's in section 2, and the first chapter we're going to do is called Create a False Sense of Security, Approach Indirectly. And this is, of course, from The Art of Seduction by Robert Greene. So should we kick off with just reading the introduction, just so that guys get
let's go.
what is being said? Okay, so what he says is, if you are too direct early on, you risk stirring up a resistance that will never be lowered. At first, there must be nothing of the seducer in your manner. The seduction should begin at an angle, indirectly, so that the target only gradually becomes aware of you. Haunt the periphery of your target's life, approach through a third party, or seem to cultivate a relatively neutral relationship, moving gradually from friend to lover. Arrange an occasional chance encounter, as if you and your target were destined to become acquainted. Nothing is more seductive than a sense of destiny. Lull the target into feeling secure and then strike. Again, he's using this slightly warlike language. But what do we think of this? Because the initial criticism that I would have is that sounds a little bit like a recipe for disaster for guys, because they're just going to get into the friend zone and nothing's going to happen.
Agree. It's a bit too much of indirectness. Now, I know Robert is a big fan of the, how do I say that? The poetic romance novels where lords and ladies and things like that, and you had to be a bit more indirect, and the seduction process was way longer. You had to be clever about it and things like that. But that's not the time we live in anymore. And he mentions the friend to a lover aspect. Do not do that. Ever. It is rarely, very rarely, that ends well. I've had it happen to me once, but that was mostly because I was a blind idiot. She was hitting on me, and I was like, "Well, you have a boyfriend. We're just friends." But I digress. As a guy, that will end in a total disaster. So take this one of the most with a grain of salt.
Yeah, I would agree, but I think there are some valuable things in here as well, because like I say, I think that perhaps what he's saying is a little bit more subtle than what we would imagine. So just to put this into context, guys, in a game sense or a dating skill sense, we often talk about a direct approach or an indirect approach. And I'm sure you all know this, but just to catch anybody up in case you don't, a direct approach is basically when you go over and you just say, what's up? You go over and you say, hey, I saw you. You look really nice. You look really cute, pretty, whatever. Love to get to know you better. Let's go for drinks. Okay, so that's very direct. You're upfront about what you want. Indirect is a little bit more like you're in a gallery and you're looking at a painting and you wander up and you say, oh, I really love the way that the brush strokes on the left of the canvas there, really evocative, don't you think? Or something like that. And then, you're getting into a conversation, but you're not immediately making it clear what you want, if you like. Now both can work really well. As I've said before many times on here, I tend to favor the direct approach because I quite like to just cut the crap and just get to the heart of the matter immediately. And the difficulty with an indirect approach, like if you say, can you tell me where the nearest Starbucks is? And she says, well, it's the first right and then on the corner. Then either she's going to walk off or you've got to transition it and say, oh, actually, that's not what I meant. Really, I fancy you and I want to ask you for a drink, which could be awkward. So to cut that out, I quite like just going for the chase, cutting to the chase. But I have to acknowledge that I think on balance, when all of this stuff that you can read about seduction and dating and relationships, I think on balance, most people actually recommend some form of more indirect approach overall.
Overall, yes, mostly because of approach anxiety, and indirect is easier to begin with.
It is easy. It's easier on the actual approach itself, and that is the bit that everybody gets their knickers in a twist about. So it makes it easier, the initial walking up. That's true.
Absolutely. Remember Day Bang by Rouge?
Yes.
I used to love that. It was it was a good formula. It was a very good formula.
The rambling.
Rambling. The Goldnook thing. Like, what was it again? The age, location.
Bull stack or something.
Yeah,
it's some kind of acronym.
Some weird acronym.
Yeah.
To build it up, but it worked perfectly. I used that in London when I was there. I mean, which fitted perfectly to me because I was a tourist back then. So I could just play it up like, well, can you tell me where the nearest blah, blah, blah is? And then all of a sudden, oh, well, wait a minute. You don't sound English, which in London, 9 times out of 10 is the case because they're either all from somewhere else, or you then all of a sudden notice something about them, blah, blah, blah. You can go from there, which still you develop it. You go from indirect more to the direct part. But it's a subtle opener instead of, boom, I just saw you, you look cute, and I wanted to say hello, which can be overwhelming.
It can be overwhelming. And listen, I've had success with both. So I wouldn't say that one is necessarily better or not than the other. I've certainly, the issue with direct, which is going up and hey, you're cute, is that the blowout rate is probably going to be higher. Just because you're weeding out, for a start, you're weeding out people who aren't interested on that level at all. But the proponents of indirect would argue that you're actually also potentially getting rejected by girls who, if you'd have hung around a little bit longer, maybe would have warmed to you, but they didn't. And so you've ruined your chances. And there might be something in that, to be honest, but it depends what kind of game you're playing. If you're somebody who, you're happy to do high volume, you're talking to lots and lots of people, lots and lots of girls, some are going to come off and some aren't, then maybe that's fine, So I think it depends on your outlook and what you're trying to do. But I do think that Robert Greene is being a little bit more subtle here than people are giving it credit for, because I see people like I see Ribney saying, if she can't give you IOIs if she doesn't know what you want, let her know the context. She knows
not true.
Be clear.
That's not completely true. She can give you plenty of IOIs even if she doesn't know what your intentions are. Very subtle, but she can clearly give them to you.
Well, exactly. I mean, I would say IOIs, you don't even have to talk to her, and she could give you an IOI because she could just look at you and, you know, say like one of us gentlemen, you know, you're incredibly fit, and she gives a smile or a wink or a little wave or something, and you know,
a longer duration than needed of eye contact.
Yes, more realistically, yes. But anyway, there's an interesting quote on page, I can't read the page number, 179, I think, from Ovid, from The Art of Love by Ovid. And he says, many women adore the elusive, hate overeagerness, so play hard to get. Stop boredom developing, and don't let your entreaties sound too confident of possession. Insinuate sex, camouflaged as friendship. I've seen ultra stubborn creatures fooled by this gambit, the switch from companion to stud. So you've got a bit of 2,000-year-old dating advice there from Ovid. So don't say that we're not cutting edge on this channel, because bringing you the the latest gems from 2,000-year-old pickup artists. But that does clarify things a bit, doesn't it? Because elusiveness and ambiguity, those things are attractive. And certainly, I think you don't, as I've always said, you don't want to be putting all your cards on the table when you approach. But I would also argue that if you go up and just say, hey, I saw you, you look really pretty. I would also argue that in itself is not really, it's not like you're declaring undying love to her, is it? Do you know what I mean? It's not like if you walked up and you were like, oh, I'm a good Christian boy and I've never talked to a girl before, but I can see that you are my future wife. Also, I mean, actually, you might get away with that if you do it in a cocky, funny way. But if you did something like that seriously, then she would probably run a mile. But I think just walking up and say, hey, you're cute, but going into something else, it sort of sets the context. But at the same time, it's not giving too much away. So I think there's a more subtle way of looking at this. Do you understand what I mean?
I 100% know what you mean. I mean, this is, again, the whole push-pull dynamic. This is not giving yourself up completely too fast, too soon, which a lot of guys tend to do.
Yeah, exactly. Because look, you can find her attractive. You can find her cute. I mean, you know, most people find, you know, plenty of other people attractive. Most guys find a variety of girls attractive. That's fine, you know, and you can acknowledge that. You can be upfront about it. Doesn't mean that, you know, it doesn't really mean anything. It doesn't mean that you're going to get married to her. It doesn't mean that you're going to give up your life's, you know, give up your Bitcoin wallet for her or anything. You know, I mean, it's a very sort of, it sets that initial context, but beyond that, she's still got to win you over. She's still got to impress you in other ways.
It's that old mystery opener. So other than your looks, what have you got going on in your life? That one.
Exactly, yeah, because he acknowledges she's good looking, fine. And, you know, she could probably work that out anyway, because why else has he come to talk to her? But then he's making it contingent on something else. That cocky, funny, so what else have you got going for you kind of thing. So, yeah, that's a good example.
Did you see that thing I shared on Twitter and I tagged you in about that woman who was like, oh, I want to talk about when men call me cute. And I was like, what? Who did Troy approach today? She was actually enraged by men calling her cute because that was a form of oppression in the patriarchy.
Yeah, I saw the tweet, but I didn't get down to watching the actual clip yet. But is that what she was saying?
Yeah, you'll laugh. It's so funny. It really is funny.
Well, I think it's a bit of a shame that people think that, really, that some women think that. And let's be real, a minority of women, I believe, think that.
Yes.
It is a bit of a shame if a compliment is made in a open, generous manner, then tar that with the idea that it's somehow derogatory or something just seems a bit sad to me, really. Particularly like we were saying yesterday, particularly at the time when, you know, social interactions are just so restricted anyway. I mean, surely we should be delighting in this stuff rather than, you know, trying to shut it down in other ways.
Absolutely. But she probably never had a compliment. She just mentioned she had it and now is pissed off about it.
Yeah.
Because people who get a genuine compliment don't react like that.
No, they don't.
It's inhuman almost. It's either they go with it, where it's like, well, thank you for noticing, or it's like, no, it's not that good, or whatever.
Yeah.
They're humbling themselves.
Yeah, for sure. I mean, generally speaking, if you're well put together, congruent, socially calibrated, all of those other things, and you walk up and you say, "Hey, listen, I saw you. I think you look really cool. I wanted to come and speak to you." Even if she's got a boyfriend, even if she's getting married later that day, really, it should be a good thing. It should be a positive, and in most cases, women will take it as a positive thing. It's just like, yeah, that's really cool. That was nice of you to say that. You've made my day. I don't want to take this any further because of X, Y, Z, because you're incredibly ugly and you don't have a Chad Thundercock 666 profile. But it was very nice of you to say so, and that's nice. You've passed positive energy on to them. They've reciprocated. Happy days. That's how it should be.
Mm-hmm.
But there is a time when some familiarity can work for you. And I would say this works in situations like with, say, baristas, girls working in coffee shops, girls working in cafes, even, dare I say, strip clubs and things like this. If you are somebody if you're around a lot with those kinds of girls, then you start to break down the bond, the barrier between customer versus punter. Sorry, customer versus the person who works there. Somebody effectively being paid because they're attractive apart from their other skills. And you sort of break that down a little bit. Mm-hmm. And you become a bit more like, oh, I know this guy. He comes in every day. And with those, people sometimes say, well, how do you meet a girl who is working as a barista in a coffee shop? And I mean, you can just go in the first time and say you look really nice, and then ask her for a date. But equally, in those kinds of situations, it doesn't help, and it can actually hurt. It doesn't hurt, and it can actually help if you go in a few times. You go backwards and forwards. She kind of gets to know you a little bit, and then over those times, you sort of build it up until eventually you ask for the number, and she gives you her number, and then you guys text and go on a date. So it can work in your favor in those kinds of situations.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Or social game came to mind as well.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, there's this girl in your friend circle, and you met her on a birthday party or whatever, and then you, for some odd reason, she has your friends on Facebook or whatever the kids use these days. And your friends have her on Facebook or Snapchat or Instagram, and then by that you meet each other and you exchange a couple of things back and forth, and then you meet again at another birthday party, and you kind of recognize each other, and she knows who you are, and chat her up a bit, and mostly for the sake of the whole friend group thing, you don't go in too direct. You let her come to you a bit, and then what I really liked about that part you just read, what was it again? Because I've got it here. What was it? Oh yeah. What was it? Sound too confident. Insinuate sex, camouflages friendship. Like, you're insinuating it, but no, we're just friends, and blah, blah, blah. Like, I know what he means. I can't think of an example, but I know exactly what he means. Like, you're being cheeky with it.
Yeah.
You're pushing a boundary. And you're taking a step back, like, oh, well, but that will never happen. It's like, yeah, like, right, that will never happen. Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Well, X3Lander says, are we talking verbal indirect game plus non-verbal direct game, i.e. flirting with your body eyes while verbally remaining platonic? And I think that's what you're talking about, really, isn't it?
Yeah.
And you absolutely can do that. You absolutely can do that. Although, as Union with Oneness says, if you look at someone with magnetic eyes that clearly communicate you want to make love, I call that direct, bro. So yeah, it's a grey area, because Tom Torero would always say that the highest form of game is actually indirect direct, in the sense that you go in with an innocuous comment. Where's the Starbucks? Oh, isn't that a nice sunset by the bridge over there, or whatever it is? You go in relatively innocuously, but you'll make it very clear through your non-verbals, so your eye contact, your physical proximity, all of those different things, that clearly there's more going on under the surface. And that actually is a very, very good technique, I would say. Like I say, and he's right. Probably the best technique, really, because then you're getting best of both worlds. Then
absolutely, it works online as well. It works online really good as well. Like, so let's say you swipe right on each other, as people tend to do. Now, I've seen openers from guys, and it's like they are way too direct. They immediately jump to the physical and blah, blah, blah. But again, you're a human being, as in people on there, like, they know why they're there, but they want to know you're not a creep.
Yeah.
So what do? You go via the quote unquote indirect approach. Like, what does she have on her profile? What is she showing on her pictures? Blah, blah, blah. Like, she already knows you find her attractive. That's what the whole bloody app is for.
Yes.
But instead of jumping on that, you just go with the pictures or whatever, and you try to actually get to know her outside of the whole physical aspect and start a basic human conversation.
Yes. Yes. Yeah, exactly. You don't need in the context of that, you don't need to just ram it in there, I was going to say, which sounds wrong, but you know what I'm saying. Red Pill Thor is in the chat. Hello, sir. Good to see you, mate. Love you guys. Fantastic show, Troy and Jack. Thank you, man. That means a lot.
Thanks,
and I need to get you on here as well. I know we talked about it, but I will follow up. Apologies for that. I've had just loads on recently. It's been really busy. In spite of lockdown.
Everybody's busy lately. I feel lazy.
Mate, my nose has been at the grindstone, putting out this world-class content and all of the stuff in the back end, as they say. It's just been crazy. So, but good though, it's fun. Then Green tells a story about somebody called the Marquis Anton Deguilin, I think, who basically gets it on with this bird called the Grande Mademoiselle, and she is a member of the aristocracy, and she's very hard to get for various different reasons. And what he does, this guy who, by all accounts, was a famed seducer, although he wasn't very good looking. So, black pill guys, you know, this is, I mean, don't shoot the messenger. I'm just saying what's in the book. But apparently he wasn't. I don't know if he was 6 foot. I can't confirm or deny whether he was 6 foot or indeed if he had a six pack. But he was a very famed seducer. He was a great speaker and whatever, you know, all of this other stuff. And he gets together with this Grand Mademoiselle effectively by friend zoning her, because he's in her circle, he's in her proximity. You know, they chat for a bit, blah, blah, blah. And then he says to her, I think he's about to go away, and he says to her, listen, I just want to make it, I'm so glad that you're my friend. This is so fantastic. I really want us to be super special friends so that we can talk about anything together. It was a conversation along those lines, but probably in more 18th century language. And she's puzzled by this because she's like, well, hang on a minute. This guy is a renowned swordsman and he doesn't find me interesting in that way. And then she gets proposed to by somebody else. And the other person, I think from memory, because I didn't write this bit down, which I should have done. The other person is a wealthy guy. He might be a royal, or he's certainly a member of the aristocracy. This guy proposes to her and she turns him down. And the reason, and then she obviously ends up getting together in the end with this Marquis Antoine. How do you even say it? Jesus. Peguilin, I think. So she ends up getting together with this guy. And the reason is because he has employed what we would call disqualification. He's effectively taken himself out of the running. And that's got her hamster crawling around the wheel, because she's thinking, well, hang on a minute, what's up? You know, why doesn't he fight? Why isn't he attracted to me? Why doesn't he like me in that particular way? But here's the thing. That is in the context of him being a famed seducer. So if he was just a regular dude, if he was just a chode, would it have had the same effect? Maybe not. So with all of these things, context is really important.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. That disqualification, that just gets them going.
it's you know, there is something in this though, isn't there? Because I've actually seen this, and I've done this in the past, but I've seen this advocated as a technique, which is to say, you meet an incredibly beautiful girl, maybe it's in social circle or something like that, and it's going to be it's going to be a challenge. Why not try disqualifying her? Why not try friend zoning her?
Mm-hmm.
Because what guy is going to do that? You know, I mean, what guy? She's a girl who's getting attention from all of these dudes, and you're there in front of her, and suddenly you're expressing disinterest. You're disqualifying the fact that anything can happen. Who's going to do that, right? And that is going to stand you out more than almost anything else you could do.
Mm-hmm. And it can be with small things. Let's say you're in a bar or whatever, and she mentions her favorite band, and all of a sudden you go like, "Honey, this can possibly not work anymore. I want a divorce." Kind of laying it on thick, but you're disqualifying her.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, there's that as well for sure. You know, you basically you disagree with things that she says. You know, all of those things. Yeah, definitely. You know,
you agree and amplify it a bit to a point where you bring it to that point of disqualifying her. Like, no, this will never work, and I'm probably gonna go with your friend. Maybe how's she? Does she like that and that as well? And then she starts doing, you know what she starts doing. Oh, I can't believe you just said that. And blah, blah, blah. No, it's not like that.
Yeah.
You play a bit. Yeah, you know what I mean? The whole, no, it's not like that.
Yeah. You want to play cat and mouse, really.
Yes.
This is what it is. And he says this is the hallmark of coquetry, really. You want to play that cat and mouse game. I mean, I remember years ago, after I'd first read, I started getting into this kind of area of study, and I'd met this girl through social circle. Really, I was friends with one girl and some other guys, and through them I met this other girl who was this very attractive, quite wealthy Australian girl who was living in London at the time. And I'd been at a house party, and I'd been chatting to her and sort of being quite flirty and everything else. And then a week or so later, we all went out to a club, and we arrived at the club, and I saw the girl there. But I basically, rather than just rushing up and continuing, I deliberately hung back and talked to other people, but didn't talk to her, and talked to other girls and things like this in the environment. And basically, as I say, I didn't approach her. And then halfway through the evening, she comes over to me, and she's like, "Oh, so are you not going to talk to me?" And et cetera, et cetera. And you know, that sort of approach could really, really work, because you're making it very ambiguous about what's really going on.
Mm-hmm. Oh, absolutely. I did that with a girl once, but I started talking to a friend because she kept looking at me, and her best friend was dating my best friend. But she and I had hooked up before, and then all of a sudden she didn't want anymore. But I kept seeing her looking at me from the other side of the room. But since her best friend was dating my best friend, I was like, well, you know what? How have you been doing? How have you and my friend been doing? And blah, 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 and this and that. And then I walked away, and then to the smokers area. I walked there, talked to a couple of friends. Guess who walked in? Strangely enough, it was her. And I was like, well, I've got my cigarette done, because back then I used to smoke. I know, terrible habit, blah, blah, blah. I know. Don't do drugs. Kids. I know. And then I walked out, and all of a sudden the friend stopped me, and she's like, yeah, but I want to know, like, what have you done all this year? And blah, blah, blah. And she started rambling something up. And I just looked at her and like, do you want to know this, or you? And then I looked at the girl who kept looking at me, and she's like,
Okay, wow.
Yeah, and she's like, shit. Seriously, you really think I didn't know this?
Wow.
Well, one thing led to another, and it was nice. It was good, very good. But that's that whole, you're not acknowledging her per se at the first moment.
Yes.
And
yes.
You let her come to you, which women prefer, in my honest experience.
Yes. Now, here's the thing. I would say that these examples are a little bit more, in an instance where there's a bit of social circle going on, or you're going to kind of see them again or something like this. If we're talking about something like Day Game, where it's like literally you see her and you're going to go over and say something and this is going to be your one chance, then the context there is slightly different, right? Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. It does. Because there's no build-up. There is a build-up to the proportions it can have in social game.
Yeah, social game is a bit of a different animal. And I think this kind of thing, I think actually really applies very well with social game. Because the other thing about social game is, and with this I would include girls that you might meet at work. And I know this is always, oh, don't do that, etc. But, you know, we've done it. We've both done it a couple of times, I think, haven't we? And again, situations like that, they are different because just by the nature of the circumstances, you know, you're not going to walk over and go, "Yeah, all right, love, you know, all right, love, nice T&A, fancy a few beers Friday night." You know, you're not going to do that on her first day in the office unless, you know, you've got a very understanding HR department. So you just by, and the same is true in social circles. So just by necessity, you're going to have to allow there to be a bit of a build-up. So in that situation, you definitely want to be a bit elusive at the beginning.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, there's not much I can add, actually. When you, like, again, the workspace thing, don't push it too much. Don't go to office parties and things like that. If you are able to build it up non-verbally, she'll find you. She'll find a way. Trust me on this one. She'll find a way.
Definitely. There is value in making her wonder why you haven't made a move, though. But in order for that to happen, there has to have been some sort of build-up, or you have to present as a guy who's probably a bit of a player. And ideally, you want both, you know, because then she's thinking, well, hang on a minute, this guy, he goes for all the women. Why isn't he going for me? And that may make her chase you. But if you're just the chode sitting in the corner who's never spoken to a woman apart from his mother in his life, then that obviously isn't going to play as well. So it's got to be congruent with the way that you present. He then talks actually a little bit, we'll finish up this section now, but he talks then about the use of actually banal conversation up front. That is making her wonder. And that reminded me of the Roosh thing, actually.
Again, it's that whole non-direct approach, what Roosh used to do. He called it old man game.
Yeah, it was really interesting because when I read that section, it really reminded me of that, because what he's saying is that you're talking, but it's very general, banal, not too exciting, just very beige in a way, the conversation. But she's left wondering what's under the surface here, what's going on. And I believe that can work, although arguably there has to be some sort of attraction, I suppose, for that to work really well. But it's an interesting concept. It is. And I do see what Roosh is getting at. And then there's a nice little quote by Ninon de L'Enclos, the 17th century courtesan and strategist of seduction. And she believed that disguising one's intentions was not only a necessity, it added to the pleasure of the game. A man should never declare his feelings, she felt, particularly early on. Now, that I do agree with. That I 100% do agree with, in the sense that sharing your feelings early on, you don't do that. You just don't. No. You don't do that. And when I say early on, I kind of mean in the first decade. You know, you don't. You've got to keep it. I joke, of course, but you've got to keep your cards close to your chest, particularly in those early stages, right? And again, this is what I say. I believe there's a distinction between going up and saying, "Oh, you're cute. I wanted to come and speak to you," but that's not displaying your feelings. That's just saying she's cute, which she kind of will get anyway.
Yeah, that's an opinion.
But you certainly don't want to be displaying the fact that you've got the feels in a very early on, because she's going to run for the hills.
There's a difference between attraction and emotion. What you are getting at in the first place is the attraction part. You're trying to build up the emotional part, the rapport, so to say. But if you're gonna,
and that was one of the disqualifiers, wasn't it? That we talked about on Monday. Showing your feelings up front too early was one of the anti-seductive traits, wasn't it?
Yeah, absolutely, because you're wearing your heart in your sleeve, so to say. And how could you know you have feelings for a person you've never met? Which is so weird.
Yeah,
Because I
yeah.
remember having it as a youngster, where it's like where you were like completely infatuated by someone's beauty, and you were just head over heels in love with her, while you just only saw her. Like teenagers, man, young teenagers, we're idiots. We're absolute
Mm,
idiots.
mm,
But
mm.
when you get older and things like that, and especially after knowing all this, you realize how stupid it really is when you go in head first with feelings.
Yeah.
Because how will you feel when a girl does that to you? Like a complete random girl, doesn't matter how hot she is. Imagine the hottest girl ever walks up to you and all of a sudden declares her love to you. You will
Mm,
question
mm,
that.
mm,
It's
mm.
like, okay, where's the camera? What's happening?
Yeah, and it is, it is a bit off-putting, like we said. I mean, I'm sure if it was the hottest girl in the world and everything, I mean, yeah, you're going to be into that for a while, but after a while, like we've said already on this series, I mean, we all want what we can't get, or we all want what we can't get easily, and I mean, I'm sure many of us have been on the receiving end of this, where we've met a girl and she's just been really, really into us, and it's felt a bit much. It's felt a bit stifling. We're like, oh, and we're just less it's a sad reality of human nature, but we are just less attracted to her than we are to the bitchy girl in the nightclub who won't look at us. That this is just the way human nature is.
Yeah, it's sad, but we want to conquer. We
Mm,
want to
mm.
overcome. And when it comes to easy, it's boring.
Exactly. So the symbol that he uses here is the spider's web, because you're drawing them in with the spider's web. And then he does the reversal, where he talks about the drawbacks to this, and he says, look, there are circumstances where boldness can carry the day, and he does kind of acknowledge, actually, which I thought was interesting. Having said all of this, he does kind of acknowledge that he says the indirect, carefully constructed seduction may reduce the number of your conquests, but will more than compensate by their quality. And that's the last sentence in the whole section. But it is a little bit of a, depending on what your objectives are here, that is a little bit of a like, oh right, I didn't see that in the small print. Because actually he's effectively saying is that you could have more conquests by being direct, but they're not going to be so high quality. So, and this is, I think, why a lot of people, like who are into day game and stuff, why they do tend to go direct, because they are, frankly, probably going for quantity rather than quality. And so, interesting that he ends with that, isn't it?
Yeah, it is. And he's not wrong. He's not wrong. Because, I mean, and I've been very open about this. I mean, I've had this on Tinder where it's like, match, what are you doing tonight? Probably you. Here's my address. See you there. And you get it off, and then it's done. Yes, I've had those. But it's nice to say I have a certain number, but they are far from as enjoyable as the girls who I've had a bit of back and forth with. You kind of learn to play with each other and play with each other, banter back and forth. Like, can she catch? Can she throw? Sorry about that. Things like that. Other than the whole, what are you doing? You, me, otherwise nobody, and go.
Yeah.
So I do know what he means.
Yeah. I mean, it's something to think about anyway. But I think, like I say, I don't think this chapter is really quite about the perennial should I go direct or indirect game conversation. I think it's slightly more subtle than that. And the bottom line is, whatever you end up doing in terms of approaching, whether you're going up and being direct or indirect, the key thing is you don't want to be betraying your feelings. That's the thing. You've got to, and you can tell her you fancy her. You can tell her you're attracted to her. That's fine, because she knows that guys are, frankly, probably fancy quite a lot of women, and that's just how guys are. But what you don't do is allow her to pin down exactly how you feel about her and all of that. That's got to be kept close to your chest, at least in the initial stages.
And that's what I kind of like about this book as well. There is no this is better than that one.
Yeah.
There is no direct versus indirect. There is just, you have a direct approach, you have an indirect approach. Learn to use them both.
Well, I don't think he says it as far as this book's concerned, but he certainly talks about it in the 48 Laws of Seduction, where he says some of these laws actually contradict each other. And you have to basically decide for yourself what's going to work in your particular circumstances. Do you think that might apply here as well?
Yes, absolutely. Like that's the thing about seduction and overall Robert Greene's books, like 48 Laws of Power, Art of Seduction, Mastery, even 33 Strategies of War. There is a time and a place for certain aspects of those laws, rules, strategies. There is no one overall best. Like the 48 Laws of Power, there is no one overarching law of power. It's all situational. But you need to know what to do in what situation.
Exactly. And if you read this book, then it's going to give you a lot of ammo, basically, for different things that are going to come up. So look, let's move on to send mixed signals, because this is a really fantastic section. So I'm quite looking forward to hearing your views on this. So let's do the intro. So he says, sending mixed signals. Once people are aware of your presence and perhaps vaguely interested, you need to stir their interest before it settles on someone else, which is true. What is obvious and striking may attract their attention at first, but that attention is often short-lived. In the long run, ambiguity is much more potent. Most of us are too obvious. Instead, be hard to figure out. Again, we're saying some of the same things here. Send mixed signals, both tough and tender, spiritual and earthy, innocent and cunning. A mix of qualities suggests depth, which fascinates even as it confuses. An elusive, enigmatic aura will make people want to know you more, drawing them into your circle. Create such power by hinting at something contradictory inside of you. I mean, I just love this section. I just find this kind of stuff fascinating. I mean, what's your view on this?
I mean, it's actually what seduction is completely based on. It's the game in and of itself. That is what this is.
Yes.
It is push and pull. It is knowing when to draw in. It is knowing when to push back, when to take steps away, take steps forward. You name it. This is why. Okay, if there's one thing you should know about, let's say, LTRs, long-term relationships or whatever, you want to keep it up, learn this.
Yes.
Learn the whole hot, cold, push-pull, send mixed signals. Learn how to play with her and play with her. And that's what this section is about. And this could be applied in not just LTRs. This could be applied to cold approaches and vibing and things like that. But this is where you build it up. And this is how.
Absolutely. No, I completely agree with that. And as a bit of a stick in the eye for it's all about looks kind of people. But again, I'm not just talking about this from a male perspective. This goes both ways. He really talks about how, what you look like, what you present up front. Yeah, that's great. But it's not really enough to fascinate her. It's not enough to, really, really get somebody on the hook. And he says, the seductive process involves filling someone's mind with your image, your innocence or your beauty or your flirtatiousness can attract their attention, but not their obsession. Okay. And, what are we looking for here? Because we want that real passion, don't we? We don't want somebody who's just like, yeah, whatever, he's all right. We want that real crazy passion. Okay. They will sit. So, if you don't have this complexity, they'll move on to the next striking image. To deepen their interest, you must hint at a complexity that cannot be grasped in a week or two. You are an elusive mystery, an irresistible lure, promising great pleasure if only it can be possessed. Once they begin to fantasize about you, they are on the brink of a slippery slope of seduction, and they will not be able to stop themselves from sliding down. Well, I mean, how many times have you met girls who've done that?
A lot. Can I address something real quick?
Yeah.
Umut Bilgin. I hope I'm saying that right, mate. He says if she is sending mixed signals, she is not into you. Wrong. Completely wrong. Because that could be a shit test in and of itself. She is playing with you. I was texting with a girl today. She was like, what did she say? not to get too much in detail, but she was like, at a certain period in time, I get really cranky and blah 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 and this and that. And I played with her a bit. I'm like, oh, so that's the moment where I have to throw small stuff at you to just keep you at bay. She's like, oh, you're only gonna piss me off more, you know that, right? I'm like, well, maybe I'll start throwing bigger things in. No, you really annoy me and blah blah blah. I'm like, you know what? You're right. I should just leave, probably. She's like, I don't want you to leave. Like, there we go. That's all I needed to hear. But that's the play in it. That's the play. He says,
exactly.
I mean, at the very beginning, no, man, that's good. She's testing you. Like, okay, this guy came up to me. Can he play ball? It's rare to meet a woman like that, by the way. I dream of the day there are more women like that who can play ball.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, no, I agree. But I see what he means. I see what Umit means in the sense that if, you get some girl's number and then she's sort of saying, oh, yeah, we can meet. And then she doesn't respond to your next messages for 3 days or something like that. That sort of mixed signals, yeah.
Yeah, that's just rude in my eyes. So maybe it's a different interpretation, but I do know what you mean with that, indeed. To me, that's not even mixed signals anymore. That's just plain old disinterest.
Yes, indeed. Where do we go next? Because there's a really interesting thing here. He talks a bit about keeping them wondering, but being subtle, which I think is key. And then he says it's worthwhile showing attributes that go against the way that you physically come across. And perhaps, Jack, we've already discussed you're a very handsome guy, but you're also quite intelligent, and maybe it kind of works with that as well. But it's sort of like if you're very young and baby faced, for example, and I had this where back in the day before I became so craggy and old like I am now. I was very baby faced. I always looked younger than I was, and all of that. And I would always, and I hadn't read this book; it was just instinctive. But I always tried to combine that with the sense that there was something a bit rough about me. There was something a bit sort of like a little bit edgy about me. And I would moderate my voice. I was a bit more like, and because I used to smoke back in the day as well. And I remember my voice used to get quite deep. And I remember one guy said to me once, like, God, your voice is so like deep. And I was like, yeah, but I'm sort of doing it deliberately. I do this with, with guys I was socializing with and also with girls that I was seeking to pull, because I would want to sort of show there was this other side to me. Do you know what I mean? I wasn't just this naive, innocent sort of kid. Oh, yeah, you're right, love. And I found that combination to work really well for me.
Full on let me kill mister.
yeah.
No, but I know what you. I know what you mean. I mean, I have no example of how I implement it. In all honesty, like in some cases, I do a bit dandyish, like with the shoes or some sports jacket or whatever. But the whole contradiction in my looks and behavior, I don't do it consciously. Like some people are like surprised when I open my mouth and there comes something intelligent comes out and thought of. And something that has been thought of. But other than that, no. Other than that, I know what you mean and I know how to implement it. I just, on a conscious level, never done it.
Yeah, well, I mean, as I say, it's not something you necessarily have to do. But when I read this, I did sort of think about the fact that I probably had done it a little bit. But I do like to bring in contrasts because, because there are different sides to even me as a character. On the one side, I have in the past in my dating life come across deliberately as very much of a, like a player type character. But of course, and deliberately to girls that I've met, because that's the impression that I wanted to give, because you want to benefit from that bad boy thing. But of course, there's this whole other side to me where, I'm somebody who reads a lot. I've got this quite almost like cerebral side to me as well. Amazingly, I know the people in the audience aren't going to believe that, but, I like to bring those things out as well. And also, I'm quite a nice, well brought up middle class boy, but, you know, I've been involved in a lot of, you know, I've met lots of very dodgy people. Been involved in lots of, you know, in my youth, working in dodgy nightclubs, hanging out with dodgy doormen and, you know, semi-criminal people around and all this kind of stuff. And I like to display those contrasts. You know what I mean? So it's not just this one-dimensional, easy to pin down sort of person.
Mm-hmm. Oh, I absolutely know what you mean, and you are a perfect example of that. I've read the book. What was it again? 10 times happiness.
Yeah. 10 times happiness, zero bullshit, which is like a self-help book that I did.
Yeah, no, I've read that, and I absolutely loved it. And you have the mixture of those contradictory things. Like, you came from that background, you worked in those shady shops, you've had your own demons to face, but you're also very literate as well. You like to dive deep into old English literature, plays, poetry, you name it. But you were in the punk rock scene as well.
Yeah,
like,
exactly.
How does that work?
Exactly. Well, you get this actually in London. There's an interesting group of people who are from quite rich backgrounds, maybe guys who went to public school, private schools as we call them. They maybe come from quite a rich background. Maybe they live in Chelsea or something like this. They come from a good family, but guys who've gone off the rails somewhat, and maybe they've got into drugs or they drink a lot or partying or whatever. And when you meet those guys, again, there's this really fascinating contrast, because on the one hand, you would think, well, they're meant to be really posh and really proper and polite and everything, but actually they're not. And they end up, I sometimes, when I go to recovery meetings, you'll sometimes hear somebody talking, and it's very, and then I ended up in a crack house in Stockwell. It was really marvelous, and the dealer came in and he pulled out a sawed-off shotgun, and I was most perturbed, but we had a cup of tea and then it was fine. And I find that sort of thing really fascinating, where you've got this, people aren't so easy to pin down, and so that's what I like to try and bring out myself, I suppose.
Yeah, as you should. I want to hear more about that story, by the way.
Well, you do. I hear loads and loads of crazy stuff from all of that, but I just wanted to read a bit here. Now, right, so this is where it starts to get really interesting, and it sort of foreshadows some of the later stuff a little bit, because then what he says is, send out a mixed signal, some sign that you're not what you seem, a paradox, and he's talked a lot about paradox and so on. But then he says, don't worry if this underquality is a negative one, like danger, cruelty, or amorality. People will be drawn to the enigma anyway, and goodness is rarely seductive. And this is where we're starting to get to some of this really fascinating stuff now, which is that, well, hang on a minute, the complexity that you show, even if it's bad, that could be good, right? And in dating and in the sexual marketplace, this is really, really true.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Have that side of danger to you. And now it finally came to me. Like, what is that thing? Overall, I'm actually a pretty laid back guy overall. Yes. But there are certain things that just piss me off to the core. They really just piss me off. And when those come up, I become very verbal and well, it is in a certain tone that is just undistinguishable from anger, so to say. People don't expect that, for me to get that riled up, at least when they don't know me. But at a certain point, and I remember an ex saying this to me, she's like, I love it when you rant. I'm like, oh, okay. That is a strange thing to love, but she digged it. Like, when you're pissed off, even in traffic and things like that, she got off on it. I don't know why, but
well, there is this, there is this side of, I think, women who are turned on by guys. Who is it that says this? It might be The Godfather, or it might be Rich, but who have the capacity for violence.
Yeah, that's right.
And when I say violence, I'm talking about fighting other guys. Fundamentally, having that capacity. It can be a turn on for women. And again, we're getting to these very dark elements of human nature here that are probably not really talked about very much in polite society. And I'm not saying anyone should actually be violent or anything like that, of course, but there is some reality in that. And I remember years ago, I mean, I'm certainly not a, I'm a lover, not a fighter by all means. But I remember years ago, when I was in Manchester, I was out with this girl and we got into a bit of I can't remember what happened. We come out of a club and we're drunk and everything else, and got into a little bit of a verbal argument with some guy. And I just, for whatever reason, I was drinking at this time, I just walked up and like squared up to the guy, and we were like that, facing each other. And the guy was saying to me that, I remember the guy said to me, "I'm going to bite your nose off." And I just sort of stood there and, said whatever. And then the guy backed down. And the guy backed down. He said, "Oh, listen, mate, listen, I'm sorry. I don't know. Whatever." And he just like backed down and backed off. And that was it. But the girl said to me, "Oh, that was so turned on by that." And you're like, "Well, what you on about?" But just that sense that you are somebody who might take action. You've got that side to you. Can be really appealing.
It's the whole be capable of violence, not violent thing.
Yeah.
That's just something that makes women inherently know when shit goes down, he's got it.
Yeah, but there's a bit more to it as well, isn't there? Because what he's talking about here, what Green's talking about here, is that darker side, and this links in with that whole bad boy thing, doesn't it? It's a bit like, if you can just show a little bit of that. It's like I was saying, Cat Academy. It's not about becoming Patrick Bateman, but it's like, can you sprinkle a little bit of it onto your otherwise, your personality? You might be a really nice, friendly, open dude, but have you got that edge to you? Have you got that little hint of danger? And I think that is the thing that fascinates.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like, do you have the capacity of evil? And take that with a grain of salt. But I keep forgetting whose quote it is, but it's like, any man who is not capable of evil shall never know what it's be like to be good.
Yeah.
Because he has no choice. There is no choice for him between good and evil, because he can't even be evil. So is he therefore good? No, because good would be the actual choice of being that over evil.
Exactly. And then he then sort of makes the point, and this I find quite interesting, that of just the amount of stuff that we have to process in the modern world. He says our minds are barraged with images, not just from media, but from the disorder of daily life. And he's sort of saying, look, you can be hot, you can be a Chad, you can be funny, witty, whatever. You can catch her attention, but she is going to be barraged with all of this other stuff. And of course, you can add to that Tinder, requests, DMs, likes, comments under her pictures, etc., all of that stuff. So how do you stand out? And even if your chief kind of fancies you initially, she thinks you're quite cute or whatever, is that really enough to differentiate you? And what he's basically saying is, no, you've got to bring something else to the table. And it's this sending mixed signals. And he says also, you really want to do that from the first encounter. You want to bring this ambiguity. You want to bring that slight edge in from that first encounter so that she's got something to wonder about. He also says, look, don't be schizophrenic. At the same time, this has got to be a little bit subtle. You don't want to be sort of like, 1 minute you're just really calm, and the next minute you go completely nuts and start throwing chairs around. I mean, that's just going to obviously scare people. So this has got to be quite subtle. But then he says, make them wonder why you might be shy or sad underneath your brash intellectual wit, and you will have their attention. Give them an ambiguity that lets them see what they want to see. Capture their imagination with a little voyeuristic glimpses into your dark soul. Your dark soul.
Sounds quite metal.
But it's interesting, isn't it? And I think, I've sort of unconsciously, I've sort of used this kind of thing for years, and it really, really does work.
Oh yeah, there's no doubt about that. The first thing that comes to mind for me is like tattoos are one of those things. Now, because you can see that, like, the most ordinary bloke But then he has tattoos, and you're wondering, like, what's that all about? Even I'm like, what's that all about? Like, what's going on around here? Like,
yeah, I think tattoos are a very good shortcut for some of this stuff. And again, Tom Torero, I think was I telling you this or somebody else? But Tom Torero has a number of tattoos now, and he's got tattoos on his knuckles actually, and a few things here and stuff like that. And he said to me, that girls love it, and of course, there's a sort of a contrast there because he spent, as far as I can see, he spent a lot of his time in the game going from being this intellectual, really, and quite nerdy sort of former Oxford student, quite geeky, sort of a nice guy, really, to becoming something else, to becoming this bad boy, this renegade, this black sheep. And the tattoos really, really help with that because it's just a very straightforward visual representation of, listen, I'm a bit of a bad boy. And he said he'd get these Russian girls saying to him, "Oh, have you been in prison?" And they're just fascinated. So yeah, I think tattoos are a shortcut. Although, of course, lots of people have tattoos now too. So maybe you can't quite rely on that.
It kind of lost its touch.
A bit, but I think it's still got something. I think you're right because tattoos used to have this aura of criminality about them. They used to be certainly in the UK, they were regarded as a very underclass, sort of undesirable thing. As I say, it's obviously it's very mainstream now, but still, I think this is why girls, you watch these reality shows and you get these girls and they go, "Oh yeah, I love a man with tats," and I think it's that thing. It's that thing. It's a bit. It still feels a bit dangerous. It still feels a bit edgy.
Mm-hmm. It's that. It's differentiation, to put it bluntly, and tattoos have had the notion of being for inmates. I mean, let's be blunt. That's what they were used to be for. Only inmates had them. And markings, things like that. Maybe it goes even more way back than that. But it still has that societal sense to it. Although, as we just mentioned, as of late, every average millennial has a tattoo right now. So it's kind of lost meaning to a certain degree. But certain tattoos do still spark it up. It's like, that.
I think it still works. He mentions Errol Flynn later on. He says the actor Errol Flynn had a boyishly angelic face, a bit like us, and a slight air of sadness. Beneath this outward appearance, however, women could sense an underlying cruelty, a criminal streak, an exciting kind of dangerousness. This play of contrary qualities attracted obsessive interest. Again, you've got that word obsessive there, because remember, we don't really want lukewarm interest here, do we? We don't want to sort of like, meh, yeah, he's all right, whatever kind of thing. We want this kind of passion. We want this obsessive interest. And, this is what he's saying here. Errol Flynn having that criminal streak, that sense of cruelty.
Which you wouldn't expect from a guy with a face like that.
Exactly. I had this question actually in Body Language Mastery one time. Some guy was saying, "Look, I've got this very babyish face. How do I show the bad boy?" And I'd actually just seen a film, one of the Fast and Furious spin-offs. I mean, rubbish film, but it was set in Tokyo, and the main baddie was this young guy, Asian guy, and he looked very young, very very baby-faced and everything. But the way that he acted, he was a mean mofo, and he was wearing this long leather coat as well, really, really mean. And it's like you can bring, and in the movie, he also had girls all over him as well, until I think the hero kicked his ass, and then whatever. But
took all his women and war brides and things like that.
Yeah, Tokyo Drift. But you can bring that contrast, and maybe the contrast makes it even more powerful. Because this guy was saying, "Oh, I can't grow stubble," and blah blah blah. And I'm like, well, yes, but it's not really about that. It's not really about that. It's about what you bring. It's about the energy you bring with your image.
Well, you hit the nail on the head. The energy you bring. This is going to sound very cliche.
Bedman-esque.
Yeah, I know. But it's in the way you walk, you talk, you carry yourself.
Exactly.
Like when you have a baby face like that, you have a deep voice, you talk with that confidence. It's like, whoa, did not expect that. What's going on around here?
Yeah.
Well, people would expect a very nervous kind of guy in front of them. But there you are with a baby face, not caring at all, carrying yourself like Mr. Big Dick Energy, with a voice Barry White, sort of say, full of confidence, deep bass. Nobody would expect that, but that's how you get them in. Then it's like, oh, hold up, there's something different about this guy. It's more than meets the eye.
Exactly. And I mean, look, if you've got that sense of defiance about you, I mean, I've never wanted to be pigeonholed anyway in my personal life in terms of, oh, he's this kind of guy or he's that kind of guy. Like, I always find that a bit annoying, and I always tend to just naturally push back on it. Do you know what I mean? So, like, if I was seen as being, I don't know, I never liked the idea of being the shy, kind of nerdy, bookish kind of dude. And eventually I pushed back on it and kind of went off the rails for many years. But, you know, I kind of pushed back on it. I was like, fuck it. I don't want to be that archetype. You know, I want to be something else. And you can make the choice to do that, you know, and actually it kind of playing with people's expectations is a really powerful thing.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But that's even in 48 Laws of Power. Which one is it again? About the female writer. You should make babies, madam. I remember that very clearly. That reinvent yourself. That's the one. Number 25, I believe. It's about reinventing yourself. It's about not falling to what society puts you in. So let's say most of your friends tell you, "Oh, you're shy," or blah blah. This is what a lot of just unplugged guys walk into. I want to be more confident. I want to be more of the shit, blah, 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 blah. My friends tell me I'm faking it. Well, you probably are in the beginning. You probably are, but you can reinvent yourself.
Yes. He also talks about Byron in here, and he refers to Lord Byron a few times in the book, and he was, of course, a fascinating character, this poet who went and banged a load of women. In fact, he banged members of his own family as well, which is a little bit not advising that on this channel. But when he went to Italy, apparently he had sex with over 200 women. So he was obviously a player. And again, there was this contrast because on the one hand he was this poet and he was aristocratic and everything else, but there was this streak of cruelty underneath. There was this streak of danger with him. And it's really getting that contrast into play. I think it just works so well. It really, really does. And it says somewhere else in here, I've lost the quote, but it's something along the lines of, most people are just painfully obvious. And you don't want to be painfully obvious.
Polo wearing, khaki wearing, sneakers, with the glasses, working at IT. There's nothing dangerous to that. Don't be that guy.
Exactly. Yeah, so I mean, it's an amazing section, isn't it? The symbol he uses, by the way, is the theatre curtains, because it's like you've got the exterior, but really you're wondering about what's underneath. And then he says, and the reversal is basically, if she's a basic bitch, don't bother. I think that's what it comes down to. It's a bit like he says some people aren't that bothered about complexity.
No, I know. Did I tell you that story? I didn't tell you that. I have a whiteboard right there. You can't see it right now, but there's a whiteboard.
And she was, it's something about.
I think. Who made that? I'm like, what? That? Yeah, who made that? That's a whiteboard. Oh, and this was an interior designer, by the way. So very complex girl, very artistic.
Yeah. No, well, it's always interesting that this dichotomy between the if you're creating this kind of content, obviously you've always got that weird balance, haven't you?
Yeah, I know.
Should we address this? The boss is saying, I'm not sure why all these coaches in the manosphere rant about dating multiple women and how men are not designed for monogamy, yet others are in long-term relationships.
Wait, what? Do we rant against that? I mean, I've dated multiple at a time. You date multiple at a time. You just have
Well, yeah, I mean, I've got a bird. I don't live with her. It was very casual for a long time, and as things stand, we still only see each other like once or twice a week. So I mean, I'm not quite sure. Well, I know the point he's making, but he's and then he's sort of ascribing things that I don't necessarily say, because he's saying all these rants about girls belong to the streets and yet they are in long-term relationships. Well, that's not something I ever say. Now, I know our good friend John says it, and it's quite funny and everything. It's not something I personally say. I if you watch all of the videos on this channel, I very rarely, in fact, I never have talk about women in any sort of derogatory way. Not because I'm a white knight, but just because it doesn't interest me. It's just not. That's just not my focus. Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm more interested in, okay, so these are the realities of the dating marketplace as we see it. So how can we best navigate through that? So I'm not interested. I'm not sort of making videos about she's for the streets and all that kind of stuff, because it's just, I mean, guys do it and it's popular and it can be quite funny, but that's just not my focus. I'm just interested. I'm probably too selfish, really, Jack, to be honest. I mean, I'm just not really. Whenever I come up against any challenge in life, I always just say, okay, so what's going on here? All right, how do I get the best out of this? Do you know what I mean? I don't really waste my time slagging off other people, that I can't control.
Mm-hmm. No, I know what you mean. Like, why bother when I'm not getting anything out of it? I mean, I have been guilty of it sometimes. Like I said, during Red Evening, like, there's an ebb and flow in it. Like, that week it's going well in the dating market, then that week it isn't, that week it is, that week it isn't. Like, I've been frustrated every now and then. But the thing is, it's both sides of the extreme. And by the way, pay attention to guys who want to grow a Twitter account, because this is how you do it. Be an extremist sometimes in certain opinions. Like, it's either you're pedestalizing them or they all belong to the streets. Now, both will cause friction in certain areas of followers. It's a seduction technique as well.
Yeah.
Because it resonates with some people. Now, do I believe some women belong to the streets? I don't know. I mean, I've been around. I've been with women who've been around. I've had plenty of joyous occasions with women who've been around who would have probably had more red flags than a communist Chinese parade, yet they were absolutely pleasant. So I don't know. I don't want to get married, so I don't really care. I don't want to have kids, so I don't really care. And I am a big proponent of what our Canadian friend Ryan says. And I'm going to misquote him, and he's going to hate me. But why would I care if she's on her best behavior with me? That's what you want to look out for.
Say that again? If she's on her best behavior with you? Yeah,
then why would you care about anything
the other stuff? Yeah. I mean, I kind of agree with that. And to be honest, you get all of these. Another thing that I've never done is write one of those lists of the qualities that a woman should have. And, the thing is, you write one of those on Twitter and you're pretty much guaranteed loads of exposure, loads of new followers, loads of engagement. You just write one of those lists. Yeah, she needs to cook and clean. She needs to wear a dress. Blah blah blah, stuff like that. And you'll probably get mainstream media coverage, and you'll probably grow your account by minimum of 10,000 followers, easy. And I've never done it. I've never done it because, and I'm an idiot, really. I probably should do it and, get into the metro and, oh, look at this dating coach. Look what he's saying, blah, 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 and get a load of people hating on you and a load of new followers and sell a load of books off the back of it, But it's just not something I've done, because that's not really, I just don't look at it in that way. I mean, I think that's coming from quite a traditionalist mindset anyway, because what you're really saying when you do that, and all due respect to people that have done those sorts of posts, but what they're really saying is this is the kind of woman that I would, if a woman wants to be marriageable, these are the kinds of things that she should do. And that's, to be frank, that's never been a massive concern of mine, which is why I always do those jokey sort of like, oh, I screen for those red flags. Do you know what I mean?
I mean, we've gone on record saying it. Red flags are a green light.
Yeah, exactly.
And she has a nose piercing. Let's go.
Yeah. Tattoos. Right, tick.
You're the one.
yeah, exactly.
But it all depends on what you want. And the thing is, like, she belongs to the streets, blah blah blah. It's like, what's the one? She's not yours. It's just your turn. It's just a maxim to get you out of your head when you break up or whatever, you get rejected. I don't know, name something. It's like you're dealing with another human being. She was never yours. At that moment, it was just your turn.
Yes.
Doesn't mean she's evil or whatever. Doesn't mean it's good. And it's not cynical either. It's just a blatant statement of putting you back down to earth. Like, hey, you're right. This person has her will of her own, and she has decided to unilaterally break what we had up. And so now she's going her own way. Well, I've had my shot. Was fun. Let's move on. It's going to hurt, but she was never yours. Just your turn.
Well, I think the whole point really of all of this red pill stuff is seeing life for what it is. I think that's all it comes down to. And I mean, listen, I mean, you know, we could bang on about the red pill and everything, but to be honest, you just need to read a few Victorian novels and you'll see red pill behaviors and all of this stuff happening. I mean, none of this stuff is really new. I mean, it's as old as the hills. It's just been expressed in a new way and on the internet and via Reddit and, you know, blogs and so on and so forth. But this is just, all this is really is seeing human behavior as it kind of is. And the truth of the matter is that, you know, there's a thin veneer of socialization. And then underneath that, we're all kind of animals just finding our way, men and women. And there's no point getting angry about that. That's just, you just want to see clearly how things are and then say, okay, right. So what do I do? What do I want? And what do I do to get there? And that's it. Yeah. You know, just play the game. It's like going to casino and getting angry at the roulette wheel. I mean, no, you just gotta. It is what it is.
The world will not be what you want it to be. The world will be what it is. That's just life.
Exactly. And the thing about dating saying that people should date multiple women. I mean, well, I personally, I'm libertarian in my outlook, so I'm not really bothered what people do. I'm not bothered whether people date multiple women or not. I mean, people can do what they want to do, but you've just got to look at the reality. You've got to look at what's going on out there, and you've got to make the best decisions for you. I mean, you know, if you want to, you know, you want to go down a traditional route and everything else, fair enough. Who are we to say that that's the wrong thing to do?
I mean, I still want to have a foursome. I mean, I'm going to be bluntly honest about that. Like, I've had a threesome. Foursome is next. I was this close, but
really,
I couldn't get them. Well, I couldn't get them all three together. Like, I had 3 plates. I had 2 of them I already had together, but I just couldn't get the third one at the same place at the same time. And then it all exploded. It's like, damn it.
Yeah.
But I mean. And the thing is, okay, Rollo's married 25 years. Ryan's together for I don't know how long. Yes, we do say spin more plates. You know why? Because most guys aren't used to it. Most guys still pedestalize women and default to blue pill behavior as soon as they get attention from a girl. That's why we say spin more plates. Because the more plates you spin, the better you realize when you've actually got a good one. High quality woman.
Yeah.
But that's the more plates you spin, the better you'll realize what you'll eventually want instead of settling for less.
Well, the thing is, right, you've also got to be realistic, because as much as we are putting ourselves forward as content creators and so on and so forth. So yes, it's right that there's some questions or scrutiny about, okay, well, what's this dude actually doing in his personal life? But in the end, you know, the reality is most guys, and I think probably most guys watching this, want to end up with somebody. Most guys want to have family and kids in some way. They might feel like that's a problem because of the way things are these days. But most guys, I was talking to this about with Aaron yesterday. Ultimately, most guys kind of want that. Most guys come to this space and they just want to find a girlfriend. So, and you're talking about people. I've seen also commentators from the Black Pill and other sides of the internet sort of slagging off dating coaches who are married and things like, oh, well, if he was that good at game, why did he get married? He could have just still be getting girls. It's like, come on, man, just be real. Like at a certain point in a dude's life, he generally says, hang on, like, I don't want to be at the nightclub every night. You know what I mean? I just want to do something else for a bit. And you've got to respect those choices. It doesn't mean that they don't know what they're talking about. It doesn't mean that suddenly they don't have the insights that they once had into the dating marketplace. It just means they're at a different stage in their life, and that's fine. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It absolutely does. I mean, I've had it every now and then.
Like, look at somebody like Ryan. I mean, like Ryan is not, for a start, Ryan's not really he talks more about the long-term relationship marriage side of things, which is fair enough. But I would also trust his advice in terms of dating and attraction as well, because he's done it, because he's got it under his belt, and he's a very intelligent guy. He can articulate it very well, and his level of analysis, his level of understanding is very, very insightful. So, I wouldn't, even somebody like Ryan, if I wouldn't write him off in terms of even dating advice just because he's in a long-term relationship and he's living with his girl. I mean, it's like, clearly he's a guy who knows what he's talking about. And that ultimately is the important thing. Because
he had to get through that to get where he is right now.
Yeah.
That's what a lot of people don't understand for some odd reason, because they don't do the bloody work.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, why are you talking about this while you're doing that? Well, maybe because I've experienced it. It's like, why do you talk? Okay, this is going to be a bit more blunt, but it's like, why do you talk about overcoming alcoholism where you're not even drinking anymore? It's like, it's a stupid thing to say. It just is dumb. Like, why are you talking about dating where you're married? If you're doing it right, marriage is still dating, dipshit. Because game doesn't end when that ring is on there.
100%. In fact, like people have been saying, it's actually game on hard mode. And the other thing is as well, it's ironic because you get it from the other side as well. Because if you're single and you're in this space, then you get guys going, oh, well, he can't get a bird. Well, what's wrong with him? That's because that's the other way that game guys and dating coaches were criticized. It's like, well, all of those skills, all of that practice, and he can't even find a wife. Well, what's the point? And it's like, so you're damned if you do, you're damned if you don't.
People will never be happy.
Exactly. And on that note, I hope we've made you guys at home happy. I've certainly enjoyed today's show. But we have to bring it to a close. So, Jack, what have you got coming out? Where can they find you, etc., etc.?
The link to my channel is in the chat, and also the Gendernomics audiobook bundle is still available. The sale is no longer in session. Now you do have to pay full price, but it's still available. Gendernomics 1 and Gendernomics 2, Building Value, written by Carl from Black Label Logic and narrated by me before I had the metal works in my life.
Luckily, because I'm not sure. I mean, I love Carl. He's a fantastic guy, but I'm not sure I want to listen to a whole audiobook narrated by him.
Would be pretty funny though. Would be funny.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah, subscribe to Jack's channel and do pick up a copy of that audiobook of Gendernomics or those audiobooks. Fantastic stuff. As far as I'm concerned, just hit subscribe on the channel, hit the notifications bell, give me a comment underneath, tell us what you liked, what you didn't like, etc., etc. Thumbs up, thumbs down, whatever you want. Any interaction is good interaction. As far as this video and YouTube's algorithm is concerned. What else? If you would like to read more of my thoughts on dating and the dating marketplace, then grab Renegade Dating Blueprint. It's a collection of 11 of my books, including How to Be an Asshole, including what else is in there? Still in the Game, 50 Shades of Game, Text Game Mastery, loads and loads of stuff in there. It's only $39. It's a steal. Get it on the link below. And that's it, really, I think.
Yeah.
The Alpha Widowmaker says, before you go, good idea or bad idea, network of female friends to provide introductions to match-worthy hotties.
I do it differently. Get a main plate, get her right, so to say, and let her introduce women to you. That's how I did it.
That works. That's true. It's not something I've done. I know what he's proposing. It's not something I've really done because I much prefer the kind of solo lone wolf kind of approach where it's like, right, I'm going to go out, I'm going to make things happen. But it could well work. I mean, pre-selection is always great, but girls do tend to be pretty rubbish at chatting other girls up as well. So there is that. I don't know. It could work from the pre-selection point of view, but then on the other hand, if the other girls just know that you're just friends with that girl, then you're not getting that sort of pre-selection either, because she's like, well, why isn't she banging him? So then it could backfire on you. So I don't know. Give it a go. See what happens. It's not a route that I've really personally ever experimented on. But if you do that, and you're getting into more social circle type stuff, then the content in the early part of this video will be very helpful because you want to use that slightly more indirect approach with those girls that you're meeting. Anyway, I think that's it. That is it. All right. We will see you guys